Hello everybody and welcome to another hobby cheating video, and today we are going to talk about non-metallic metal, specifically gold non-metallic metal. Now, non-metallic metal is a wide area of discussion, okay? And we're going to cover one specific element today, which is gold. Now, you can do non-metallic metal effects in lots of different colors. This guy is already partially painted in non-metallic metal turquoise, so you can see the scales and the legs here. And the core concept of non-metallic metal versus true metallic metal, okay, is quite simple. Are you using paint that has metal flakes as pigment in it, say something like this, which is called true metallic metal, okay? The pigment that is in this is real reflective metal, usually aluminum powder or what's the other ones that gets used? I can't think of them off the top of my head. There's several others that get used. But they're all this with other types of paint or color in them or something. And so if you're doing true metallic metal, this is what you're using. Now, the problem with this is that you don't get to control the light. The light reflects off of whatever it reflects off of. And if I rotate the miniature and there's a light directly above this, where the reflection point is cast is going to alter. Now, I can control it to some degree by adding the appropriate tints and adding very bright silvers, but I'm still not completely in control of the light. Non-metallic metal is the way where you take complete control of the light and scale down the reflection to be appropriate at this scale of miniature. Okay? So, in this case, we're going to talk gold. I'll do future ones on silver and other types of colors, and even how I do this turquoise at some point in time. But let's talk about the basics here. What do you need? All right, so to do a non-metallic metal gold, you need something in the range of this. Now, what do I have here? I have a very dark brown. In this case, it's kind of a brown red. I have a very ruddy brown. I have a very nice mid-tone warm brown. I have a very solid ochre color. I actually have two of those for various reasons. And then you need some whites. Now, a lot of people use a near white. They'll use ivory or something like that. That's fine. My personal experience, I like the shine better. Now, this is to do sort of a standard gold. Keep in mind, there's lots of different recipes for this. Now, the paints I have here, these four scale 75s you see, are from one of my favorite ranges of paints. This is from scale 75, their fantasy and games line. Specifically, this is the 4 colors in the Steam and Punk collection: Arbuckle's Brown, Shrapnel Red, Bosch Chestnut, and Peanut Butter. Peanut Butter, I may be allergic to it and it may kill me normally, but this is one of my favorite colors ever. These 3 are Game Color Extra Opaque Heavy Gold Brown. You'll see why I use this in a moment. And then 2 types of white, and these are actually relevant. The War Colors White, which is my favorite liquid pigment white. And then White Glaze from Vallejo Model Color, which is a glaze color and a very different type of paint and used to push highlights. So, now, lots of people have recipes for this. Okay, and they're all valid. I tried a bunch of them and I didn't really like them. I have tried 30 different recipes of non-metallic metal gold using everything from Citadel and Games Workshop stuff through most of Vallejo and other combinations and other paint ranges until I came to this, and this is what I like. And what I'm going to do here isn't exactly the one you get on the box with the Steam and Punk set. But this is the way I've come to it. Now, real quick, just continue to talk about theory. We're 4 minutes into this and I haven't put any paint on. That seems like a great tutorial, but I want to give you the background. The warmer you want your gold, the more you want to use things like red glazes and stuff like that. Okay, a lot of people like Darren Latham rely on red glazes at the end to add this ruddiness back in. You can also use this as your paint. The colder you want your gold, the more antiqued and ancient, you want to get rid of these reds and rely more on black browns. So like if I was going to do a more antiqued gold, I would probably get rid of these and I would go to something like a gray, and I would blend this in. Okay? So, there's the background. Now, let's talk about how I'm going to use these paints. Let me get these out of the way. I've got here my standard zenithal guy. You can see I've already done a lot of the work on the green, and now I'm going to do the golden. We're going to specifically do one tiny section here. The zenithal's still handy here, even though we're going to completely cover it, just because it let me see exactly where all the detail was. But I'm going to start out with, when you've got this zenithal, the most important thing is you got to have a solid color underneath. To work on gold, you've got to start with a good base. So for me, what I have found that I like is a 50-50 mix of this Arbuckle's brown and the shrapnel red. Don't know why I like those two together. I just happen to like those two together. It provides a nice warm red undertone. So what I'm going to do is, this is very simple. I'm just going to get a nice thin base coat of this down. Now I'm going to specifically focus here on these wings, because I think they're an interesting element to paint and will let me show a lot of what I want to do. Also, when I paint non-metallic metal gold, I tend to do it exactly as you're going to see me do it here. What I mean by that is I do one small section at a time. I don't do the whole, I don't like paint everything brown, then paint everything gold, and then try to do all these blends. I do one individual section at a time. I just find that that helps you control your blends and get each section looking nice. Now, once we've got that brown down there, that's when we're going to go to the extra opaque heavy gold brown. I love this color as a base. I hate this color as anything close to your final color. It is god-awful as a final color, but it's a wonderful base when mixed with other things. Irony of ironies, I guess. Okay. And you really got to shake these extra opaque ones. Like, you have to shake the crap out of them. Now, one point about the way that I paint this. Doing it section to section, you have to be using a wet palette. Let me just say that. Because I'm going to put a bunch of paint on my palette and require it to sit there for a long time. I just wasted a bunch of that because I shook it too hard and then didn't let it settle. And it did the whole run out of the front thing. Smart me. But anyways, you've got to have a wet palette so you can keep your paint fresh. But okay. So now I take some of my extra opaque gold brown. We of course still thin it with water, but that's okay. We're not using it. We're not using the extra opaque because we want to use thick paint. We're using the extra opaque so we can thin it and still retain the coverage. This paint is basically a high density, high pigment density paint. You can see there on my thumb how it covers that up. So next up, very easy. We're just going to put down a layer of this. Now, if I have some very deep shadows that I want to use that I know are going to end up being shadowed later, I won't worry about covering those. So if you don't get this over perfect, it's not the biggest deal in the world. Like right there on that edge where that sort of meets, one level of the wing meets the next, maybe I won't worry if I don't get that perfectly in there. Because we can use that to just build some shadows later when we're going to go in and recreate our shadows with this, with something similar to what undertoned this. Now, even with the extra opaque, you might need to do 2 thin layers. As Duncan always tells us, 2 thin layers are much better than 1 thick one. We want control. Okay. So, now it looks like that. Pretty ugly. Alright. So we let that dry completely. Alright. So, and as I'm talking here, I'm going to put the rest of my paints on my palette that I need. What I do from this point is now it's all just becomes a game of blending. Now, I like to do my version of this through glazes. Ben Komitz does his mainly through loaded brush and then glazes. You can do this in a lot of different ways, and you have to find the way that's right for you, because you know what? That's the right way. There is no other right way except the way that works for you. There is no sacred single way to paint ever anything. So I'm going to show you my method, and you can play around with whatever blending methods you like. You could wet blend this, you could do lots of different things. They're all fine. Okay, so the first thing I like to do is sketch in my shadows. Okay, so for that, I take some of my Bosch chestnut, which is going to act as my shadow here, my first shadow. I like to get a nice watered thin version of that. So how thin? About that thin. Okay. And then what I do is I come in here and I say, well, where am I going to want my shadows? Nonmetallic metal is a study of light. And I think, well, this is going to have a shadow under here, right? Because there's a hangover. And I think in between each wing, I'm going to want some kind of shadow. So I'm going to kind of push some brown down in that. And then probably up here in the up where this thing meets this wing, there'll be a shadow. So let's kind of push some shadow up that direction. Because when I think about how this is going to look, the light is going to come across his chest in a line right there. That's going to be the hot spot. So know where your hot spot is before you start. And then we've got these little rivets here, or whatever they are, I don't know, these lines on his chest. And I'm doing this with the very soft brown first because it's just going to start basically tinting my yellow, and that's what I want to begin with. We don't want something, you notice how thin this is? It lets me build my shadows very slowly and very carefully. You'll notice I'm not being too careful about getting paint on these other elements here. They're all going to get repainted later. So I'm not too worried about that. Okay, so there we go. Can you see that little bit of brown in there? Notice how that shadow is already kind of making that look metallic, right? You can already see the little bit of light. Okay, next up, we take just the ruddy color, but you basically want to go to one step darker. We get that into a nice thin glaze. And now in slightly less space, we're going to push that red. Again, this is to make a very warm gold. If you're aiming at a very cold gold, you wouldn't want this red step. And there's lots of different recipes for this. If you don't happen to have this scale 75 set, no big deal. I want to teach you the theory, not say these are the exact paints you got to use. If you just Google non-metallic metal gold paint recipes, you're going to get like 800 different variations. Find one that works for you or that has the paints you have. It's fine. Okay, so now you can see what we did there with the red. Again, I'm pushing the shadows toward the outside. So I'm cutting the line because there's a gap in between the wings, so I want that to be shadowed, and then I'm pushing the shadows out. All right, now I'm going to go to my last color here, my straight Arbuckle's brown, which almost has a bit of a purple tinge to it, which again works well to shadow gold, like you can see there. That's kind of that Arbuckle's brown. Normally it's a very purple brown. It's a super interesting color. I really love this set. The colors are just fascinating. Now I'm going to trace this thin line along each wing to really create that separation. And then up into the very recesses, I'm going to push this. So There we go. All right, so now we've got something like that, and you can see how we've built up a nice organic shadow there. Well, what do you think the next way is? If we've gone all the way down in shadows, where would you go next? If you're like me, you'd go up to the highlights next, and you'd be right. So what I'm going to actually do here is take straight white, okay? And using that straight white, I'm going to trace in where I want a little bit of my highlights. I'm going to put the very center of them. So I want it there and there. I want it to come across just like that and catch right there. Now, if you squint your eyes, I don't know if that'll work for you, but if you squint your eyes at it and it kind of looks metallic, good, you're going the right direction. The reason I put in those highlights is because I want to make sure what I'm doing is looking right. The next thing I do is we need to pick out our edges. In this case, I've got these ridges. So we're just going to quickly edge highlight these ridges. Because the edges of metal will catch almost every time. And this is very careful work because you just put in all those shadows, and if you overbrush, you will destroy all of your shadows. And you want to run the white all the way down into your shadow area, more or less. You can undo it later if it looks too strong. Okay? Something like that. Okay. Now we need to hit this little guy. Tell you what, I'm going to do this other part off camera here because that is too small to see without a bright light. But I'll kind of give you the idea. Okay. So something like that. All right, now now is where we go to our peanut butter. That peanut butter is a wonderful color. It's this wonderful sort of ochre. It's very rich. In fact, let me show you it on the palette here. I don't know if you can see that. But here's my palette. This is the original Opaque. You can see how yellow it is, or the heavy gold brown. This is the peanut butter. Look how wonderful and rich that is by comparison. And that's going to give our gold a lot of nice warmth. So we're going to take that, we're going to thin it down into a glaze again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just run straight over this middle section. And I'm going to seek to cover shadow and light more or less completely. Okay? So can you see what's happening there? Yeah. The goal here is we sketched in our highlight to get an idea of where we wanted it to be, but it wasn't meant to be the actual final highlight. We're going to come back and we're going to fix that. And now we want to use that to smooth out the transition. We're using this very thin peanut butter ochre color. You would use whatever your yellow is to smooth this transition. So we're softening some of the shadows, softening the highlights, bringing it all into this gold tone. Okay? Okay. So now we look like that. Now, the next thing we do, remember I told you I have that white glaze because I use that for different purposes. Well, welcome to the different purpose. It's a much different paint, and over here on my palette I put a nice little transition, a little walk between the peanut butter and the white. You can see that there. And I just start grabbing from that, and I start working my highlights back in. And I just start slowly climbing up, covering tinier and tinier areas. Okay. It's important to let that dry. Don't get too aggressive. If you're not trying to wet blend and you start messing with these paints, what's going to happen is you're going to pull up your previous layer of paint. The reason I like the white glaze and use that separately is because it's a very soft white, and it really just kind of highlights the whole area. Okay, so we just keep working it, working it. We're just pushing that up. If you look real close right there, I don't know if you can see that or not, but on the top one, you can see where I didn't let the paint dry long enough and it kind of smudged just a little. It's okay. That happens, you can fix it. You just gotta let it really dry all the way and then go back in and give it a little fix. Okay, and what we're doing here is covering progressively smaller areas as we get progressively closer to just pure white. And we create that nice sheen effect. Now, if at any point you think your transitions are too stark or anything like that, you know what you can do? We could go back to our peanut butter, and we can take that and we can just drag that edge straight over there and just run a nice glaze and smooth that right back out. Just smooth that edge out. Okay? If you think your shadows aren't deep enough or something like that, okay. Let's go back to some of our darker colors. And I can grab those and reinforce my shadows if they got away from me for any reason. Like say you had a little bit of overpaint or something. Lord knows that never happens to me. No, it happens all the time. Okay? The point is you can keep going back and forth with this until you're comfortable with your control and the look of your transition from, oops, there we go, from the yellow through the brown and into your deepest shadows. Okay? In general, what you're looking for with this to end at is you need that area of ultra high contrast. You have to hit basically near white. Okay? Because that's what's going to make it actually read as metal to the eye. When your eye sees something reflecting, like when you see a surface that reflects almost all of the light bounced back at it, what's happening there? Your eye is registering white because that's what light basically comes back to you as. Now there's blue light and yellow light and stuff like that, but what's effectively happening there is your eye is registering it as, you know, pure white light getting reflected almost at 100% reflectivity off of this surface. So when we want to take control of that and replicate that using paint, we have to end up at almost pure white. And to capture that transition, we have to go down to something very dark to contrast it. Namely, in this case, like the browns. Okay? And there we go. That's it. That's all there is to it. And by that's all there is to it, I mean I'll continue to push this around for another 10 minutes after I stop recording until I absolutely love it. But that's because I'm doing this for competition, so perfection is the goal. You don't have to aim at that. You can see how I achieve that. Now you can do that a lot quicker. If I was going to aim to do this a lot quicker, I wouldn't keep glazing so hard back and forth. I would just lay in 1 or 2 shadows, and then I could say loaded brush up my tip and just do a little spread out of the other color. There's lots of different methods to get this. Like I said, if you like to wet blend, then you could always have lay down the yellow with some drying retardant, get into your white, and just mix a little bit in, and then smooth the edges while you're wet blending there. Okay? You have to find the method that you're comfortable with that works for you. That's what I'll say. This is just the method that I found that works for me. But in the end, there you go. That's what you should end up with. Something that looks like that, where you've got that very clear, bright white in the middle, and that goes out through your yellow spectrum, through that gold, that ochre color, into something much darker that reads to the eye like gold in shadow. Like I said, there's a lot of good recipes for it out there. Find one that has the paints you like, if there's a particular brand of paint you particularly enjoy. There's lots of them that use GW colors and Vallejo colors. People have a million recipes. This is just mine. So, there you go. There's your non-metallic metal tutorial on gold. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found this useful. I'm going to repeat this process. After spending about 10 more minutes on that wing, I just have to repeat that for every black and white thing you see still on this miniature. So we'll see you in a long time. I appreciate this. I hope you enjoyed the gold. As always, if you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments down below or request for future videos. I always enjoy that. Otherwise, give it a like if you like it, subscribe if you want to see more hobby cheating in the future, and as always, we'll see you next time.